Example 2 looks very similar to example 1. The main difference is when you get cos all by itself. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides, subtract cos x on both sides. Can you see that you would get 3 cos x equals negative 2? And when you get cos x by itself, by dividing by 3, you get negative 2 over 3, which is not on our unit circle. So now to find our reference angle, cos inverse of positive 2/3. Remember, when you're doing your reference angle, it's always the positive. Cos inverse positive 2/3. This question is in radians, and my answer is in degrees. So then I have to hit my mode button, change it to radians. And then if you don't want to rewrite what you had written before because you're like, oh, that's a waste of time, if you have a newer version, you can just go up with your arrows and then press enter. It retypes it. Very nice. If you have the older version, you can go second, enter, and it retypes what you had before. Push enter again. So our reference angle is 0.841. Since cos is negative, we need to find our angles in quadrants 2 and 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my calculator. I'm going to store my reference angle above your on button, store as x, so it remembers it. And then in quadrant 2, it's going to be pi minus x. And in quadrant 3, it's going to be pi plus x. So 2.30 and 3.98. Now, those are our answers between 0 and 2 pi. If you drew a picture of them, right, we have 1 in quadrant 2 and 1 in quadrant 3. In both cases, the reference angle is 0.84. Now, what are they looking for? The domain that's given to us is from negative pi over 2 less than or equal to x less than 3 pi over 2. So again, I think of 0, because that's where standard positions start. That would be from 0 to 3 pi over 2 in the positive direction, and from 0 to negative pi over 2 in the negative direction. So it still includes one full time around, just any answer you have in quadrant 4 would be negative. Yes? If you change degrees and is in radians, then you lose a mark. So, nice thing about this question is where are our answers? We have an answer here in quadrant 2. We have this answer here in quadrant 3. They're actually not going to change. Even though we have a new domain, the answers happen to be the same. This is, all of this stuff up till now is review, but none of the general solution is on your quiz tomorrow. Okay, and no multi-revolution questions on your quiz. On your unit test, you will have solving, but the general solution and the multi-revolution will wait until your next test, because they're part of chapter. That's what's new in chapter 7. So if we had an answer in the fourth quadrant, so let's say there was an answer here, right? Well, this would still be your reference angle, right? And so it would now just be negative whatever your reference angle was. Yeah, if it was that 0.84, then it would be negative 0.84. But we don't have any answers in quadrant 4, so we happen to have these. It says, then write the general solution. So for our general solution, we have 2.30 and 3.98. Add 2k pi to both of those. Where k is an integer. So again, the general solution, you take your answers from 0 to 2 pi that you've solved and add 2k pi to both of them. For part B, to the nearest degree, solve this equation. So if I get cosecant by itself, I would have negative 5 over root 2. And if cosecant is negative 5 over root 2, then you know sine of x will be root 2 over negative 5. Is that on your pie plate? No. So we'll need to get a reference angle, sine inverse of positive root 2 over 5. I'm going to use the fraction button. Reference angle of 0.286. Are we in degrees? No. So now we have to switch back to degrees. Retype that. 16.4 degrees. If you do your whole answer in radians, then you lose a mark. The reason for that is any mistake you make with material that you've learned in this year is usually a 1-mark mistake. If you make a mistake saying, oh, 2 plus 3 is 6, right? Because your brain just multiplied instead of added for whatever reason, and it does that. That's a half a mark because that mistake is something, they're like, did they learn adding and multiplying new this year? No. So then it takes off a half a mark because it's something from a previous year. If you make a mistake, silly mistake simplifying a fraction, it's a half a mark. But any kind of concept that's from this year that you make a mistake on, it's a full mark.
Let's all make mistakes, guys.
So, what did we find? We found our reference angle is 16.4 degrees. I guess I should practice using my approximation signs as much as possible. And then what quadrants would it be in? And does it say to the nearest degree? To the nearest degree. So again, I'm going to go to my calculator. I'm going to store my reference angle as x. I'm going to try to store it as x. Did my calculator just freeze? It just froze. So we're going to pretend I did that. Yeah, well, I'll be fine. And then what quadrants would you have sine be negative? Quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. So in quadrant 3, you do 180 plus 16. In quadrant 4, you would do 180 minus 16. And those would be our answers between 0 and 2 pi. But where are they looking? So if I draw a picture, right? I've got an answer in quadrant 3. I've got an answer in quadrant 4. Here's my reference angle of 16 degrees in both of those. But according to the domain that they're asking for, they're saying from negative 180 to 180. So can you see that that would be negative angles from 0 to 180 and positive angles from 0 to positive 180? So my two answers fall in quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. So when I'm actually going to answer them, I'll need to find this angle and this angle. And these ones that we found are not part of our solution. So what will our solution be? What's this one going to be? Negative 16 degrees. And this one will be negative 164 degrees. And so that'll be our final answer. Why those canceled out? In the drawing part, why are they there, or how did I get the arrows? Okay. So when I had 196 and 344, I can show those with green arrows because they're positive angles. So the 196 would be 180 plus 16. And the 344, which is this angle, well, that would be 360 minus 16. because 360 is all the way around minus 16. So those are my answers between 0 and 2 pi, or 0 and 360 degrees. To get the negative ones, the red ones, well, this red one, I said to myself, halfway around is 180, and if I minus 16, whatever I get, I'll make it negative. And this one is really easy to see. If my reference angle is 16, then this angle will be negative 16. Now in part B, we're asked to do the general solution. So our general solution is we take our answers from 0 to 360. I have two answers from 0 to 360. I add 360 degrees k times. Where k is an integer.
So it doesn't matter if we use negative 16.
No, if you had used, because can you see that negative 16 is coterminal with 344? So this is 344 plus 360k. If k is minus 1, you hit negative 16. And the same thing, this one and this one are coterminal. So when you're writing the general solution, all you're doing is writing all coterminal angles that end at a certain spot. And whatever number is here just has to be one of those.
196
Okay?
plus or minus 360. Okay?
Well, you don't have to do the plus or, you can have plus or minus, but the fact that k is an integer adds or subtracts, because k can be positive or negative. Okay? I mean, would you agree that 1,000 times around the circle would be 36,000?
Yeah.
So is 36,344 coterminal with 344? Yes. So if you wanted to, you could write that, just to make me frustrated when I have to mark.
If I put like a million
Yeah, you're like, if the first part of the quiz is really bad, then you revenge yourself on the second part of the quiz by making numbers like this. Okay, questions for practice on this one are 6 and 7.